Greetings, this is Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I have drifted into the Underworld. The Star Wars Underworld. I have a bad feeling about this.
Here we go. We must go to the lower levels. The Underworld.
You've taken your first step into a larger world.
You're after something.
Ben.
Since I've started the Underworld, I've met so many great friends.
Chris.
I grew up in the 1990s, and mall packaging is nostalgic for me.
Dominic.
What I love most about Star Wars is that it's fun, and it's all-round good times.
So, this is where the fun begins.
May the Force be with us.
This thing really moves!
Woo! I like this!
I can't believe you came all this way to see me.
Why am I not in the intro? I gotta come up with a snappy line.
Well, hello again, everybody, and welcome back to the Star Wars Underworld podcast, your weekly source for all the latest breaking Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. This week, we are back to discuss the latest casting report from Star Wars Starfighter. That's right, we've got another major cast member joining the 2027 movie, and we'll be answering some of your fantastic questions during our iconic Ask the SWU segment. All that and so much more here tonight on the Star Wars Underworld podcast. First, though, introductions are in order in case you're new to the show or you've forgotten who we are. That can happen. My name is Dominic Jones, and with me, as always, is the founder of the Star Wars Underworld, Ben Hart, the Star Wars guy.
How's it going, everybody? Good to be back. And of course, so much going on, so much happening. And of course, I am super enthused to talk about what will be obviously the biggest movie of 2027. And probably the biggest movie of the century. The one that we're all so incredibly excited about. Of course, I'm talking about Spaceballs 2, baby. Yeah. May the Schwartz be with you. It's back. Yogurt's back. Dark Helmet's back. Lone Star's back. Let's go.
I am genuinely excited for Spaceballs 2. The Schwartz awakens.
I like low key. Yeah, me too.
Yeah, the teaser trailer that they put out for that today is so funny. And I felt so attacked, but also seen by it. If folks, if you haven't seen this, it's a crawl, except the crawl is the blue text of like a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. And it just lays out all of the franchise projects there have been since 1983, like how many Dune movies, how many Alien movies, how many Star Wars movies, how there's so many Star Wars shows, then now the Star Wars shows are becoming movies. It's so like, it just points out all of the like, you know, kind of absurdity in the fact that we really only have like 12 things now. You know, back in the day, you used to get there used to be lots of movies. Now it feels like there are 12 and they're all just kind of the same thing being recycled. And, you know, we can feel however you feel about that. And there is, to be fair, lots of great other stuff being made, but you feel how you want to feel about that. But it does leave lots on the table for people like Mel Brooks and Josh Gad and everybody who's working on Spaceballs 2 to, you know, have a little fun with it. And I have a feeling, I don't know it for a fact, but I just have a feeling, and just the way like that crawl starts with this like list of projects, I have a feeling fandom is going to come in for some more than light ribbing in this movie. I feel like the fans are going to kind of be a little bit of the butt of the joke, and you know what? We should be. It's about damn time.
Yeah, I think I got to thinking about how the fact that I feel like this may be the exact thing we need right now. For one, we need funny stuff. Okay, we need something to things. I am all for like political commentary. We just got done with Andor. Very serious, very apt stuff happened today as of recording. You're just like, oh yeah, I saw that in the episode of Andor. Like, you know, it's very on the nose, and I'm all for that. I think that's a great thing. But also, I also agree that, like, you know, movies, TV shows, they should be an escape every once in a while. They should be able to take you out of the world. That's what I love about going to a movie theater and just like turning off my phone and the world and watching something that is completely dumb and, of another planet. And, I think Spaceballs is also that, but also there's a lot of cynicism about the movie industry now, and cynicism just about not just Star Wars, but all franchises. And I think this is the perfect medium to do this. Is the perfect people to do this, to, kind of make fun of this, because George Lucas signed off on, Robot Chicken, Family Guy, all this stuff that made fun of Star Wars. I think this is the right thing to do with things, and I'm only imagining the parody, because I'm thinking the sequels and Mandalorian and all this kind of stuff is going to be directly in the crosshairs of this movie. I think we're going to see. I think they've already basically said, this is, of course, Hollywood Reporter just a couple hours ago said that Louis Pullman, who is the real life son of Bill Pullman, is in talks to play a character called Starburst, which is the son of that character. And I'm thinking,
Lone Star,
if they don't make him like a Kylo Ren stand-in in this movie, like, what are they doing? Like, this stuff writes itself.
Yeah, it's gonna be good. I have a feeling, because they mentioned the prequels right off the bat in the thing. I have a feeling Darth Jar Jar is going to be real in this movie.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I don't mean like literally, like I don't think it's gonna be Darth Jar Jar the way we get in the Lego specials, but like the equivalent of like the goofy, bumbling, boneheaded character that everybody hates.
So much
is going to turn
in
out
this
to be
crawl. They mention so many things. I feel like, and to its credit, like Spaceballs doesn't just make fun of Star Wars. It does it runs the gamut of all sci-fi and fantasy stuff like that back in the day. So I think Mel Brooks has been he's had jokes in his mind for years. You can imagine all the stuff that he wants to do. And like, this movie's probably going to be like 4 hours long, all the jokes they can fit in, for all the things, not just the prequels and the sequels, but, all the aliens and all the Jurassic Parks that they mentioned. Yeah. It's going to be wild.
And they do have I think the other thing that's going to benefit this movie is, like we said, there's so much to pull from. It's going to make it easier to resist the temptation to just do the same jokes again, because there's so many like iconic moments in Spaceballs, comb the desert, and the moment when they get the VHS off the shelf and they watch themselves in the moment and all of that stuff. It's so like, there's so many like iconic moments like that. And I think there would be a temptation just to do that again, but like updated. But because there is so many things you can pull from, so many places you can parody, then I think it bodes well. It bodes well for this movie. So yeah, it's gonna be exciting. 2027, gonna get a new Star Wars movie and a new Spaceballs movie. Who'da thunk it? Ben, if folks don't already know, it's just you and me tonight.
Yep.
Chris and Hannah not here. They send their regards, but it's just you and me. So we're gonna power forward through this show. And of course, we will remind you off the hop here to punch the subscribe button. That way you never miss an episode. Subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You will never miss an episode. If you want to support us, if you want to go the extra mile in supporting us, you can drop a super chat in the chat, or you can become a channel member. Those are ways to financially support what we do here at the Star Wars Underworld Network. And you can also leave us a review on places. If you can't do the financial thing, you just want to leave a review, that does help us out. Keep the discussion going between shows. Join the Discord. Ben and Joel are always cooking up new things, playing video games, watching movies, watching shows, having fun discussions. Join the Discord. Follow us on social media at the SWU, and check out the other shows on the Star Wars Underworld Network, including Ion Cannon, Tales from Beyond the Galaxy, Tractor Beam, and some more. There isn't more. That's it. Those are the only ones.
That's it.
That's it.
And that's enough.
Andor. We talk about Andor on all the shows. That's all we talk about now. All right. Let's get into things. We'll start with the top story for this week. Mia Goth. Mia Goth has joined the cast of Starfighter. She'll be playing a villain opposite Ryan Gosling in the movie. Mia Goth, kind of a scream queen, known for being in horror movies. I'll be honest, I've heard of some of these movies that she's in, but I look at them all and I go, no, not for me, never.
Yeah,
so I look forward to
I'm not
seeing her in this, but I have no clue.
Horror for the most part is not my bag, so I'm not like, I've not seen any of her stuff, and I've not seen any. Apparently, the 3 big movies that she's done recently are all connected. They are all like a trilogy, which I didn't know until I started researching her a little bit. So I'm like very intrigued by that, and obviously like a little tempted because I'm a big wuss when it comes to blood and gore, but you know, maybe this is my time. But so I'm not familiar with her outside just hearing her name a lot because she's been in a lot of stuff. She's been doing a lot, and I think you know, she's an up and coming star that I think is interesting. I think her look is interesting with what she's done. In just those 3 movies, like you can see, just look up Pearl, look up, you know, Maxine, like very different looks to them. And I think that bodes well to like what she could bring to Star Wars. Like I can see her doing literally anything. Like she could be, you know, a happy-go-lucky person. She could be a tortured soul. She could be a weird alien. She could just be a normal-looking person that's just acting weird and freaking everyone out. Like, you know, I think she can do a villain quite well. And I think, you know, whatever she brings to this movie, I think it's gonna be really, really interesting. And they also apparently, according to this report, they said that there's going to be they said originally, they said Ryan Gosling's nephew. And then like 30 minutes later, that disappeared. So take that as you will. You're muted. You're muted, Dom.
So sorry, just to fill folks in on what's been going on here. If you haven't been keeping up with the report, the story was initially broken by the Insider, and then the Hollywood Reporter dropped a whole bunch more details about it. So what they say are details are scant, but the movie does involve Gosling playing a character that must protect a young charge against evil pursuers. Goth will play one of those pursuers. It's the same role that Mikey Madison had been circling before her deal blew up like a Death Star over money matters. So yeah, Gosling protecting a young charge, as he said, at one point might have been his nephew, maybe not.
I mean, it could be as simple as the scoopers were like, well, we're not totally confident in this. We don't want to put this out there right yet, or for whatever reason. So that could be it. It could also be that just, you know, things change during production. Like, even though this movie is apparently about to go into production this fall, like, you know, things can still change. Characters, Luke's Star Killer like halfway through filming of A New Hope, and then they changed to Skywalker. Like, things happen.
Yeah. So I think part of it could also be like when they're casting, you know, they use all these code words and these code names to like hide details.
Oh yeah.
And so they might have said, well, what do we want the relationship between these characters to be like? And they say uncle and nephew. And so when they're screen testing these young actors against Ryan Gosling, they say, like, be like your uncle and your uncle and a nephew off on an adventure. And that's what they're going with, even though in the story they may just be 2 strangers that build up a relationship. Ryan Gosling playing someone protecting a young charge against evil pursuers. I don't know. It sounds a lot like that other Star Wars show where the older actor protects a young kid. What? No, not the Mandalorian. No, not Obi-Wan Kenobi. No, not the Bad Batch. It is a little bit like,
it's tropey.
I know Star Wars has found its groove with this, and it's an effective way to tell stories in the Star Wars universe. You know how they say 3's a crowd? 4 is, I'm not quite sure what, but it feels like too many too soon. Like, since Mando premiered 2019, yeah, you have that, then you have Bad Batch 2021, Obi-Wan 2022, and Mando has sort of carried on, Bad Batch carried on through all of that, and now we're getting another one. do they not have other ideas at Lucasfilm? I sometimes find myself wondering this. Did they not have other ideas?
And we also can't ignore the non-Star Wars parallels of, like, one of the other biggest shows in the world, The Last of Us. I know it's not. I know this last season wasn't necessarily about that specific thing, but the theme is still there and it's still present, and it's a theme through all mythology. Been tons of movies about this. It's not a new concept. I weirdly almost want this kid to be Ryan Gosling's nephew, just because it would be different. It wouldn't be.
Would it though?
Because all like this would be his actual family versus like, oh, this kid I found, I have to protect. This would be like, no, this is my nephew. This is my flesh and blood that I have to protect, that I have to get things. And I'm sure it will be different in execution, and there'll be different things. And obviously there's probably going to be a Starfighter involved. So, not that that's
there is
different, but I think, in execution, I'm sure they'll find ways, but I think the obvious stuff comes to the surface right now, which is like, I've heard this premise before. I've heard this synopsis before. In fact, if you take away like the name Ryan Gosling and Mia Goth, you could almost be describing, several other, not just Star Wars projects, but recent Star Wars projects, like Disney era Star Wars projects.
Yeah, so this is what's interesting about this setup, right? Of having the older character protecting a young charge, is it allows Star Wars to retain its generational appeal and continue to be like a generational story, but it allows the focus to remain on the older generation. So yes, the younger generation is a big part of it. Yes, Grogu, Omega, Leia, they're all big parts of their stories. But the main character of those stories, with I guess the exception of Bad Batch, is Din Djarin, is Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like, that's who the story is really focused on. And Hunter too in Bad Batch, I'd say is sort of co-lead with Omega.
Right.
And I get it. It allows you to sort of cast an established actor. They get to be the lead in the movie. They're not the mentor character. They're not playing old Ben Kenobi. They're not playing old Han Solo in The Force Awakens. They're not even playing Qui-Gon Jinn necessarily. They're the main character, but you keep the generational quality of Star Wars. But I think it's time for Star Wars to focus on a new generation. Like, they kind of chickened out of fully embracing that with the sequels. They spent a lot of time with the original trilogy cast in very principal roles in those movies, and they were kind of forced in The Rise of Skywalker to not do that because Carrie Fisher passed away, and so they could only use very limited footage of her. But even still, they couched everything in the past instead of making it about the future. And I think at a certain point, the stories have to stop being about the current generation and start being about the next generation. And even though these are all new characters, Ryan Gosling's character in this movie is going to be the older character. He's of the generation that remembers the New Republic. He lived through the war against the First Order, all this stuff, and this kid's probably going to have been pretty young during all that stuff. So I feel like it's kind of time to embrace the younger characters, cast a younger cast, and let them grow into the parts instead of relying on making the older generations the focus. Because in Star Wars, with what George was doing, the younger generation was always the focus.
Yeah,
that it was Luke, it was Anakin, it was those characters. And my hope is that eventually, probably with the Simon Kinberg trilogy, maybe the Rey movie will act as a bit of a passing of the torch on this, but that we're gonna finally get to that, instead of getting sort of stuck in this generational limbo where you need an older character with ties to the past, and instead of making the young ward, the young charge, as they say in the Hollywood Reporter story, instead of making them the lead and making them the main character, you keep the older character as the main character, because you can do more references with them, to be very cynical about it.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see like how how the dynamic will be. Will it be like, obviously Ryan Gosling is leading this movie. He was the first announced cast member because he's Ryan Gosling, and you would do that. Normally speaking, you set the tone for that, and you want more eyes on your project by casting Ryan Gosling. But is he actually the star? And is he going to be?
Yes.
I think he's, at the very least, he will be a co-lead. It'll be interesting to see how they do that, because Skeleton Crew starring Jude Law. I would argue that the kids are still the protagonists of that story. I think Skeleton Crew in itself is a really good example of giving the next generation, those kids, their limelight and their focus in the story. And for a lot of those episodes, a lot of scenes, they are carrying that story. And Jude Law is not around. I think that's a great example of that. And I hope they lean into more of that, like you're saying, because I think, that is perspective. I think George himself, really pushed for that and made some bold choices that, let's be clear, upset a few people along the way. Building your story, building basically what it was at the time, a trilogy of movies around a 9-year-old kid. That's a bold choice. A different director would have, as I've heard suggested a billion times at this point, why wasn't Anakin just, make him 18, blah, blah, blah. That's, George was trying to not do that. He had done that before, and going back and giving an actual kid, which is something that you don't see a whole lot. And I think, this was before Stranger Things, before we had things, which also those kids aren't kids anymore. So, what's that point? But, I'm very curious, how young will this kid be? How much of a focus will he have? And I hope he does have a substantial link in the same vein as Skeleton Crew, of just this is the future. This is the next generation. And letting him kind of take him or her. I would honestly love it if it was a her more than a him, because I think we do need more representation like that. We've had a lot of father-son relationships in Star Wars. I think we need more father-daughter relationships, or nephew. You know what I'm saying?
Uncle,
need
niece.
more of that.
Yeah,
nephew and niece. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll see where we wind up with this. This report does confirm a little bit to me that they're playing it safe with this movie, as I think we expect them to. But regardless, regardless of any of this, I'm just excited that they're making this, that things are moving along with this project. We can be as cynical and worried as we want. At the end of the day, we've had so many false starts that I'm just glad that this movie's being made. I'm glad that we're getting casting reports. Because for all those other movies, right? All those other movies, what have we been talking about? Screenwriters and directors and all the stuff that can change a lot before anything happens, before anything real happens on the movie, before you start actually putting, pictures on, before you actually start recording images. Once you start casting, that's when all of a sudden things get real. And Gosling being involved, Mia Goth being involved, these are two. In Gosling's case, he's a bona fide A-lister, and and in her case, she's a legitimate known quantity. These aren't people that you can cancel a movie on, right? You cancel a movie on them, it's kind of embarrassing for everybody involved, and it does not bode well for anybody. So this all just, it's kind of sad that this is what we're thinking about, but that is the thought that occurred to me as I was reading the story was, some of these details aren't as exciting to me. That's not that's not as original as I wish they'd go with this. We have kind of seen this story before a lot in Star Wars, especially recently, but at least they're making it. At least it's going to get made. And once the ball gets rolling again, hopefully it will be unstoppable this time, and we'll get some of those more out of the box, more original ideas down the line with Dawn of the Jedi, Taika's movie, Simon Kinberg's trilogy, all that stuff.
Yeah, and I will a feather in this movie's cap, and all props to everyone involved with this. Like doing it post Rise of Skywalker, I
Yeah.
think is probably the most intriguing part of this. When if you take the premise of this and you say, oh, it's Ryan Gosling and a kid, and they're escaping some some weird villains, and they have to escape in a starfighter across the galaxy, and it's things like I think the instinct for a lot of people, especially people in Sean Levy's age group, who I assume, he's a little bit older than us. He probably grew up with the original trilogy. He would want to set it during that time period because we've seen a lot of that. Because there's I don't know if you haven't noticed this yet, there's a hell of a lot of storytelling between episodes 3 and 4, and around the original trilogy. In fact, most of the storytelling is around then. Doing this and having say, okay, now we're going to actually push the story forward. I'm really excited about the fact that the next 2 Star Wars movies are surrounding the sequel trilogy now, are heading that direction and past that.
Oh,
and that's interesting. Not that I expect that we're going to get like huge revelations. We're going to get a a Poe Dameron cameo in this movie or whatever else.
I mean, I feel like a cameo from someone from the sequel trilogy that feels very on the table. Daisy's already
nothing is impossible. Let's be clear here, is impossible.
Yeah. I mean, Daisy's already back for one movie. Who's to say they don't, I mean, let's be honest. This kid, the nephew, the charge, whatever we want to call him, they're going to be force sensitive. Let's just acknowledge that right now.
That's the thing.
They're going to be force sensitive. And you know what? Maybe at the end of the movie, you get a Daisy Ridley cameo saying, come with me, child, and I will teach you the ways of the Skywalkers. And then, 10 years from now, we'll get a movie with this kid, and the kid will be like, they'll be like, what's your name to the kid at the end of it? They'll be like, my name is Ryan Gosling Skywalker.
I know deep down in my heart that what you're saying is 1,000% true. This is going to happen. It's not if, but when that happens.
Yeah.
But for the love of God, Sean Levy, can you resist the urge? Can this kid just be normal? Does he have to be a future Jedi? Like, even Omega was just like, oh, maybe she's a Jedi. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, please, no, not every person's force sensitive. Like I love, the recent quotes from for people like talking about, how many people have been in contact with a force user in Star Wars. Like nobody. These people are, it's such a small margin. But yet everyone we see on screen is force sensitive. Hell, freaking Cassian Andor is hanging out with a force healer telling him that he has a destiny and he's a messenger. Like, come on, guys.
Yeah, it's true. You're saying like it's surprising that it's not set in the original trilogy era. I read that description and I'm like, this feels like the most Mandoverse ass show I've ever heard in my life. Like I'm like,
there's that too.
There's probably started as a New Republic idea, and Kathleen Kennedy went to Sean Levy. Was like, no, please put it somewhere else. We can't do that again. It's gonna be exciting. It is gonna be exciting, and the fact that like cameras are gonna roll this fall in England, like we're going to have this movie, in 2 years. It's gonna be a good time. It's going to be a good time.
It feels like a good, very natural thing that happened. It feels like, as much as there's been so much drama around so many different movies, talk about Rian Johnson's trilogy of what the hell happened with that. And they were so gung-ho about doing it, and that just didn't happen. And then, Patty Jenkins' movie and all these different things that seemingly they were really focused on doing them. They announced them. I don't believe for a second they didn't have intent to make some of these movies.
Yeah,
or TV shows for that matter, but it just hasn't happened yet. It doesn't happen yet. This felt like just an organic thing of just like Sean Levy had an idea, he pitched it, he had a script, and they're doing it. And I'm just like, that's what you want from this. It's like people have ideas and they do them, and that's what I want.
And Lucasfilm has clearly wanted to do like this sort of movie for a long time. This isn't the Patty Jenkins movie. This isn't Rogue Squadron. But it's got like similar vibes to it. It is like a spaceship movie. It's about a cool starfighter. Like it's got that same sort of feeling. So even though I don't think it's the same movie, I think, like you said, Levy went to them with the right pitch at the right time. and it happened to be something they'd already been kind of thinking in that direction before they pulled the trigger on this movie.
Yeah.
The other detail that this is the same role that Mikey Madison was they were looking at her for, and then they things fell apart because of money. Any real thoughts on that? Not really.
I mean, it's clear that, like, that was probably like one of a billion different, offers that, Mikey Madison got, because she's an Oscar, she all that buzz around her, obviously was getting and things, and Lucasfilm wanted to jump on that. But obviously she also knows her worth and be like, no. And like, I love the whole thing with Jeremy Renner recently was like very open about, like, yeah, they wanted to do season 2 of Hawkeye, but they offered me half the money, and I said no. Like, I wasn't doing that. I'm not half the person I was. I'm not doing it. I know my worth. And I'm just like, yeah, it's based what happened. But in this case, they can't really recast Hawkeye, but they could just get a different actress for this. So yeah, that's what happened. So whatever else. So hopefully Mikey Madison will give another take at Star Wars eventually in the future.
Yeah. And I will say, I think Lucasfilm, when they're casting like these, younger actors, they can be a little bit cheap. If you've ever read the reports of how much Daisy Ridley and John Boyega got paid for The Force Awakens, you're like, wait, what? Like, I mean, it's more money than you or I make in a year.
Oh, yeah.
It's maybe 10 times that. But then you look at what they made compared to what Mark Hamill made, and then you look at their relative screen time, and you're like, hey, wait a minute.
Like The Force Awakens, like domestically is like one of the, if not still the top grossing like things. It made, it made billions. Like those movies made billions, and the relative paycheck of just like, they're the draw. They're the people are going to see, and they're getting this paycheck. Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, they carried the movie, and Mark just had to stand there and look intense for a few minutes.
And I'm not, there's no disrespect to Mark, because
no
props to you. Stand there, look cool, be Mark Hamill, and get your paycheck. But
get paid, yeah. And I'm sure when all three of them, or when all three of Daisy, John, and Oscar come back, they'll get significant raises for the next Star Wars movies that they do. For Daisy, I guess that'll be in a couple of years with the new Jedi Order movie. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Yeah, give Oscar enough for a new house. Come on, do it. Just give him the money. Just give him the money.
Exactly.
We want pullback.
Exactly. All right, we'll move on from that and get to some of your questions in our iconic Ask the SWU segment. We get these questions from Discord. We get them from the live chat. The live chat super chats get priority. So if you want to fire off a super chat, we will get to those. I know Joel already submitted one. We'll get to it in a minute or two. And anybody else that wants to jump in on that as well can do so. Let us begin, though, with this one from the Discord. Star Raptor, aka Chris Abbott, asks, when are we getting our celebration episode?
That's actually a question that I had. So thank you, Star Raptor, for asking about that, because that was a question that was preying on my mind.
Let's see. Celebration wrapped up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 6 weeks ago. 7 weeks ago. 7 weeks ago. So it was the 18th to the 20th of April. I don't know. I would like to do a proper celebration episode. I'd like to go through the celebration day by day and talk about.
We know all the news. We know all the news. Everybody knows everything that happened, but like what you guys experienced, I think, is something that I think everyone would love to hear and like actually on the ground, because as you know, it's there's no communicata when it comes to getting raw reactions, because you don't have internet and we don't know what's going on, and it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, and like you're posting a little bit, but you also want to live in the moment. You want to be there and experience it. I'll say this. I think at this celebration, I spent more time checking out the live stage than I've ever checked out before. I've ever done that before. I think in previous years, I've always had the adjective like, yeah, I can watch that afterwards. Why would I stand here and watch it now? And sure, yeah, I never do. I never do go back and watch it. Like I might watch select things. So this time I did like sort of make a bit of a conscious effort just to check it out a little bit more. And there was like a great variety of guests on there. Like there was the ones you expect, as everybody saw, I'm sure. But also like, you know, like they had like the director of Godzilla -1. He was just there. He was just, like,
cool.
he wasn't like
Really
promoting
cool.
anything. He was just there. They just got him out there. And it was sort of emblematic of this celebration in the sense that everybody was just excited to be there. You know, the local folks, the people from Japan and other parts of Asia, you know, for them, this is as close to you know, this is a real rare occasion. They don't get to go to a lot of celebrations. There hasn't been one in almost 20 years. You know, it's, you know, it'll have been 5 years between American celebrations between Anaheim and Los Angeles. It was 18 years between celebrations Japan. Like that's three times plus as long. There have been 4 celebrations in Europe, 3 of them in London. Like there have been a lot of these opportunities for people in other parts of the world to go. So like the local fans were really excited, and the people that traveled there, you know, like there was a feeling of like, you know, we're on an adventure. Like what, like, you know, God love Anaheim. It's fun to go there, but you don't really feel like you're on an adventure there. You feel like you're on a vacation. Sure. You know, Disneyland's right there. There's palm trees. The weather's beautiful. Like all that stuff. It's great, but you don't feel like you're on an adventure. Japan felt like an adventure. And, you know, most people who went over for it from Europe, from North America, South America, you know, other parts of the world, you know, you went for a long time. You didn't just go for celebration. Like again, Celebration Anaheim, you know, fly in one day before, fly out 2 days afterwards, so you can go to Disneyland. Like that's the whole game right there. I was in Japan for almost 3 weeks, and like it was terrific. It was so much fun, but at the same time, it was also like a little bit exhausting. Like I was so very, very tired by the end of it, because, you know, I'd just been going. Like this was a whole new experience to be over there and to just experience a completely different other part of the world. I'll say this, like, I don't think I fully appreciated Tokyo when I was there, because I'd been there for so long, and it was in the little gap of like, I've hit the wall and I'm tired, but celebration is still like 3 or 4 days away. So I'm like, just get me to the friggin' celebration. Get me to the friggin' celebration. I'm excited to be there. So I don't think I like fully appreciated Tokyo, because I had spent so much time enjoying, you know, Osaka and Kyoto and Fukuoka and Hiroshima and like all the other parts of Japan that I'd been to, and you know, had a really, really sort of wonderful, magical time there. And then, yeah, just at Celebration, there was an energy, there was an excitement, there was a vibe that everybody was just so thrilled to be there. And it was kind of unlike any other celebration in that regard. Yeah. One other thing was, one of my regrets from the last Celebration Anaheim was you guys all went to the Siege of Mandalore screening.
Oh.
And I skipped it. I didn't go to it. And I kind of regretted it. I kind of thought it would have been, looking back on it, I thought, oh, that would have been fun. I should have gone to it. Again, at the time, it was like, I can watch that anytime. Why would I spend my celebration time? And then you realize
that's your head. Yeah.
But then at the same time, you're like, oh no, you can watch it with an audience. You can watch it on the big screen with the best audio, like all of that stuff. So this time I saw they were doing it. I'm like, I'm going to go to that. I'm going to have fun. And, you know, 90% of Celebration Japan was in English. You know, there was a little bit of Japanese. There was some Japanese programming, but the vast majority of it was in English. And before the Siege of Mandalore screening, Dave Filoni and Sam Witwer come out. They do a little introduction for it. They talk about it for, 2 minutes, and then they go away, and the lights go down at the celebration stage, and everyone's excited. And you know how the Siege of Mandalore starts with like the old school Lucasfilm logo, and then the actual Star Wars theme instead of the Clone Wars theme. And then it goes into the Tom Kane narration. And the Tom Kane narration started, and I realized it wasn't Tom Kane.
Oh my God.
It was his Japanese counterpart. They were showing the episodes in Japanese.
That's amazing.
So like it was for the local audience. And like when it happened, I could see the English subtitles on the screen. And there was like a moment of cognitive dissonance where I'm like, that's interesting that they've got the subtitles on. Why would they do that? And then I realized I don't understand a word that's being said right now. I don't know what's happening here. And like everybody sort of realized it. And there was like a kind of a gasp in the theater in the celebration stage. And I did see a few people get up and leave. And I was I was tempted for a minute. I'm like, do I really want to? And then I thought, I'm in Japan. I should watch it in Japanese. Yeah. That just makes sense. And so I stayed and watched it. And yeah, like I said, probably 90% of the people that were there at the beginning stayed all the way through. And it was just kind of fun. It was chill. It was sort of a nice sort of chilled moment in the whole celebration. So
that's amazing.
Yeah. It was a good time. So I've got more stories like that. We can tell more as we go. And I know Hannah does as well. And so hopefully one of these weeks we can kick back by the fire and tell some of these stories and just go through Celebration Japan and really give it its due, because that's the one downside of Andor coming out so close to it. And honestly, that's been the downside of these shows premiering so close to Celebration, is that we don't really get to give the Celebration its due, because you're still focused on, with Celebration 2022, it was Obi-Wan Kenobi. 2023, we were like right at the end of season 3 of Mando. There were still like, I think, 2 episodes left. And then this year, Andor kicks off, 2 days afterwards. So you just get thrust into the season of a new show, and you don't get to give these celebrations their due. Because Ben, you remember this Celebration 2015, we did a month. We spent a month breaking down that celebration. The entire show for 4 weeks after the celebration was just breaking down that celebration, going day by day over it with like the finest of fine tooth combs. We were truly combing the desert, finding just great things. And probably could have done that with Celebration Japan. Could have done 3 weeks worth of shows, but alas, we got caught up in Andor, and then there's been so much other fun stuff that has been dropping ever since then. And it doesn't help that everybody's schedule seems to be completely in flux for the last couple of months.
Doesn't help.
It's made it difficult, but hopefully we'll get a chance to do that and get a chance to just kick back and tell some stories.
Yeah, and I encourage everyone in the audience, like, you can use Ask SWU on the Discord. If you're not on Discord, join the Discord. Literally, it is free. We don't charge anything.
I still have to tell a story on the show, and I need a prop, and I don't have the prop with me. Of like one of the most like touching meetings with a Star Wars Underworld listener I've ever had at a celebration. It happened very, very close to the end of the celebration. Like it very nearly didn't happen, like like that sort of thing, because it was during the closing ceremonies. Like we were.
Wow.
Yeah. So we'll see if that is a tease for another week. But I'll have to remember to bring the prop.
Send in questions, guys. Send in questions, like specific things, like, because I think there's stuff that I really didn't get to talk about as much as I wanted to, because there was so much happening. Like, we were stuff on the show as it was being announced. It's like, oh, that's happening. And there's still like interviews that will drop today, and like, stuff that happens. And I'm like, oh, they talked about that during Celebration. I didn't know. And, there's just so much happens. It's just like, whoop, it's gone.
Yeah, that is like, that's the beauty and the curse of Celebration. Even a celebration like this that was, a little bit light on announcements. Like there weren't
It really was. And like, we thought we were going to get the Mandalorian Grogu trailer. And you guys got something that we didn't.
I did. I saw it.
Yeah.
It was great.
Like you guys saw it something in the room, but like, it is, I've always said, like, whether you're at home or whatever else, Celebration is still an event, is still a great thing to watch from at home. And I did get a chance to, more so than previous celebrations, I really sat down, like watched some panels on the live stream, because I know I always procrastinate, being like, I'll watch that later, and I never do.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll just say that I tried to have that attitude a little bit more of this celebration of like being a little bit more like trying to take the pressure off the celebration and not trying to do like the perfect thing every time of like, oh, what's the biggest, best thing? And just going with, well, what can I enjoy? What can be fun? And so I did try to like wander into some panels of things that like weren't necessarily the biggest, bestest thing, wasn't like the biggest thing, and just try to kick back and enjoy it a little bit. I wound up in a couple of different ILM panels that were really interesting. I mean, we'll do one since there's no news this week. I'll do another story. Really one of the panels that like, I did really, of course, want to see was the Lucasfilm Animation panel. It was the 20th anniversary of Lucasfilm Animation, and of course they were teasing that there would be announcements, and of course there were. And it was the first day, so it was after the Mando Grogu panel, and that it ends. And I met up with a friend of mine, and we're like, okay, we want to get into animation, and we're willing to like sacrifice a portion of the day to make it happen. Like we'll go line up somewhere and we'll be in line for a long time. So we go over to the celebration stage and just looking around for somebody to ask, have you started the line for the animation panel yet? Can we get into it? And I found one of the like local staffers who didn't speak much English. He was trying his best. Dude was trying his best. and there just was the language barrier. He didn't speak enough English. I didn't speak any Japanese. So like it's on me for not learning his language in his country. So I realized we're not getting anywhere. And I saw two guys that looked very American that had the walkie-talkies. So they're official.
Yeah.
And I saw them and I said to him, don't worry, man. I'm going to go ask these guys. And these guys go, oh, yeah, come over and ask us. I'm like, I could just tell these are going to be the guys who have the answers. And it turned out to be the guys who were in charge of crowd control for the celebration stage. God. So they were the perfect people to ask. And they were so genuinely friendly. We were laughing, we were joking, having just having a grand old time just while they were giving us the information. And basically what we figured out was they weren't going to clear the celebration stage after the panel that was on then. So if we wanted to, we could go into that panel, catch the second half of it, and then just stick around there for an hour and a half until the next panel. So you get a nice seat, be nice and comfy, all that. Yeah. So it was yeah, let's do that. And the panel that was on was the Light and Magic Season 2 preview.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Which featured, among other people, Ahmed Best, Rob Coleman, Doug Chang, John Knoll, a bunch of people like that. And it was moderated by Sam Witwer. And so we got to be there and hear Ahmed talk about how he helped create the Yoda fight in Attack of the Clones. You could see the genuine friendship that exists between Rob Coleman and Ahmed Best, these two guys, because they worked so very closely together on Phantom Menace, creating Jar Jar, that they have a real bond. And you could see it when they were just sitting on stage, and they said we haven't seen each other probably in 20 years, but that's how real the bonds were. Wow. That they stuck together like that. And so it wound up being just a great panel to catch the end of. Witwer was terrific as the moderator. And then, we managed to get seats in the VIP area for that panel because there weren't a ton of people there and the VIP seats were empty when we walked in. So we just kind of shuffled into them, and then they kicked us out of those seats and made us go to other seats once it was over. Once the panel was over. So we did that, and we went and we got some nice comfy seats up in the first row of the balcony in the celebration hall. And we sat there and just kicked back and chatted with the fans around us for an hour and a half. And then we got the animation panel, which was well worth the wait, culminating, of course, in the Darth Maul Shadow Lord announcement with Witwer. So there you go. There you go. All right, there's some celebration stories. That'll have to tie.
Are you happy now, Star Raptor?
Are you entertained? All right, we'll go to super chat from Joel because this is kind of in the same vein. It says, "Okay, this is a question for Dominic and Hannah if she shows up. She's not. What did you think of the Ahsoka concept art from trailer from Celebration? I loved it. So yeah, so again, cast your minds back 7 weeks to Star Wars Celebration Japan. One of the big panels was the Ahsoka panel, and at the end of that panel, since they hadn't started shooting yet, they didn't have much that they could do in the way of reveals. So they did a special trailer that was very similar to, if you've ever seen this, you can find it on YouTube, the teaser trailer for The Empire Strikes Back, which is just mainly concept art and a voiceover saying Luke Skywalker and Han Solo blew up the Death Star, but now they're back for more. I think it's actually Harrison Ford who does the voiceover weirdly,
right.
which is very strange. And they just basically did that. And it's concept art from Ahsoka. There's some models and stuff in there. It confirms like Zeb's going to be in the season, confirms Thrawn's back, all that stuff. It was really, really fun. And I loved it as a way to end the panel. Because they had nothing to show. They hadn't filmed it. They had not filmed a frame of season 2. And so how do you wrap up the panel with anything other than something like that? And so they did that, and it was really, really fun. There's not much in there that's like new and shocking. And if there was anything that was like I've forgotten most of what like the reveals were. But it was just kind of fun. It was a cute way to end the panel, and I give them props for being creative and coming up with something like that instead of just shooing us out of the panel room saying we have nothing. I'm sorry, we don't have anything for you. They came up with something goofy and fun, and everybody understood what it was when they showed it. There was I don't think anybody left that panel disappointed because everyone understood going in what it was going to be. Plus, we'd just seen an hour-long conversation with Dave Filoni, Jon Favreau, Rosario Dawson, and Hayden Christensen. How can you be mad after that?
No.
How can you be mad after that?
And I think that's what I've been kind of like pushing for more so recently. They did it with Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I think Skeleton Crew was due one now, like retrospective panels that are kind of like, showing just talking about what happened and not being all, well, this might happen, blah, 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 like doing the Filoni thing. Like actually like having a substantial conversation about what has actually happened and what we're looking at, what we've all seen. But, you need to have that panel of like, well, season 2, like they're literally like taking a break from training for the season to come do Celebration.
Yeah.
I think that was a really cool way to like, show off some concept art, give you a sense of what's actually in the thing. For the record, yes, I did see it. I wasn't supposed to. I don't care. But like, just a really cool way of doing that without actually showing anything, which is something they did back in the day. It was based on something that really happened.
Yeah. And like, there were reveals during the panel too, right? Like, Filoni confirmed that Rory McCann was taking over as Balin, and they had those 2 images of him. Hayden confirmed that he was back as Anakin for season 2. Filoni confirmed like Akbar is going to be in the season. And he's going to face off against Thrawn, which is pretty interesting, pretty cool. So I was been thinking about that Akbar thing a lot lately, Ben, because I'm sure you guys talked about this last week. There was that, I guess it was Hollywood Reporter or was it Variety? One of those. They had the story about, how all the studios are kind of going through succession plannings because, a lot of the presidents and CEOs are kind of old, and it's time to, shepherd in a new generation. And so they talked a lot. They talked about Dave Filoni and how it seems like it's going to be Filoni and Carrie Beck are kind of the front runners to be sort of the 2-headed monster that runs Lucasfilm. I say that lovingly, as a 2-headed monster. But that there was some concern from some people within Disney about whether or not Dave Filoni was the guy to oversee all of Star Wars. And they had the comment, he's not the Andor guy, he's the Ahsoka guy. Basically saying Andor, they want to do more things like Andor and less things like Ahsoka. The quality of Andor is so much higher, yada, yada, yada. And so I've been thinking, I'm like, what does Filoni need to do to make it so that being the Ahsoka guy is as good as being the Andor guy? And so I was been thinking about like season 2 of Andor and some of the things that are in that it does really, really well. And, beyond just sort of the obvious, have a good story, have it be well acted and well shot, and have a, compelling lead, because, I think Ahsoka has that. I think Ahsoka's a compelling lead. Rosario's a great actor. All of that, it's already got that in its favor. But what Andor did really, really well was it took familiar characters, like sort of secondary and tertiary characters that we already knew, and took them out of just being like, hey, isn't this a fun reference, and made them into being a real character. And of course, I'm talking about Mon Mothma, right? Mon Mothma, in all her other appearances, is just kind of like, hey, it's Mon Mothma, the character from that scene in Return of the Jedi. And I'm talking Clone Wars, I'm talking Rebels, even talking Ahsoka, honestly. It's just that character. And then Andor comes in and makes her into this like super compelling, really interesting, rich and deep character. I kind of love it. So you kind of love it. So I kind of want Filoni to do that with Admiral Akbar. I want him to take Admiral Akbar, who is a character who has basically the same history as Mon Mothma did going into Andor. He's in a couple of scenes in Return of the Jedi. Has the Clone Wars appearance. He's really only really known as the guy that says it's a trap. He's maybe got a little bit more cultural awareness because that joke, that meme went everywhere. So my challenge for Dave Filoni would be, don't coast on the fact that it's a trap guy. Make him into a rich, compelling, deep, interesting character on his own, so that even if you don't know about Return of the Jedi, you don't know that it's the same guy, you don't know about him as the meme, you don't know anything about him, you just know him as the guy, this is the fish man in Ahsoka. Make it so that he is like that compelling, he is that level of compelling as Mon Mothma. If you do that really, really well, I think that goes a long way. And there's a second thing that I have that I think he needs to do, but I want to get your opinion on making Akbar the great character that he always should have been.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
No, I think, because I'm thinking back to a lot of discussions that we had, particularly in the year 2017, when it was, and look, if you watch The Last Jedi and Admiral Akbar was your number one Glup Shido, you watched The Last Jedi and you're like, oh my God, they killed my number one Glup Shido. I'm upset about that. I was like, fine. Like, but there was a painfully obvious, a lot of bad actors who just wanted to bash the movie for whatever reason, which there's plenty of legitimate reasons I think you could bash that movie. That was one that I feel was illegitimate. It was like, they killed Admiral Akbar with no ceremony or whatever else. And like this great, wonderful character, like no, like, and like you put so eloquently, like he basically was just a meme. He was a joke. He wasn't this huge, eloquent character. But I truly hope that what you're saying can be true, and making him that, and making him more of a deeper character, because he really hasn't been. Like, yes, he had a good stint in Clone Wars. I liked his appearance there. There's a lot of publishing about him, I'm sure. And like even in the EU and Legends, like there was this whole backstory of him kind of being a servant of Tarkin. That's how he learned how to be such a good strategist, and he was rescued and all this kind of stuff. Like, a little bit more deepening of that thing, which I think is cool. But I think, yes, taking that character and making more dramatic, and making that moment in Last Jedi make us feel something more, because I think most people were just like, oh, Admiral Akbar, the itch trap guy, he died. Okay. Like, that was the reaction of it.
I will say, Ben, when Dave Filoni started talking about how Akbar was going to be in this movie or in the show, I'm at Celebration. I'm in the Galaxy stage watching the live feed. And in my head, I'm just thinking, good grief, I cannot go through another round of the Akbar should have done the Holdo maneuver discourse. I cannot stomach that. It nearly killed me the last time around.
It's just the ultimate in cringe. I can't do it anymore. I don't even want to mention it.
Yeah, I don't want to
because
go back to
I
it.
don't want
yeah.
to go back. Please, just
Yeah.
spare me. All that I say, like, yes, I hope that Filoni take a page out of Tony Gilroy's book and be like,
Yeah.
let's deepen this character. And I know that's hard to do because Genevieve O'Reilly is a real person that can emote in a way, and obviously better than her human counterparts. She's really versus a freaking puppet, which there's only so much to do. But Star Wars has been known to get emotions that have never been seen before out of mere plastic and stuff. So I think there's a precedent. I'm not saying it's impossible. It absolutely is.
They've been doing more with like prominent alien characters lately, like Ahsoka, obviously herself, Jecki in the Acolyte. Now those are very humanoid characters where it's it's a person with makeup, and Akbar is like a fish mask. But if we go back, like who's one of the most emotional characters in all of Star Wars? Chewbacca.
Yeah.
That's not a human face.
It's literally just like a guy in a suit, and he opens his mouth, and the mouth of the Chewbacca mask moves with him.
Yeah.
That's basically the long and short of it. And it's funny watching the Book of Boba Fett and seeing the massive amount of expression that's on the Black Chrysanthemum mask. You see that character, and his eyebrows go up and down, and he has all these, and I think his lips kind of move. Stuff that you never saw Chewbacca do. And I was like, okay, why didn't they do that with Chewbacca? Oh, they were trying to match what they did in 1977. They couldn't add that later. You can have Chewbacca doing all these expressions that he never done before in the sequel trilogy or even Revenge of the Sith. But they did that
or
with
Solo.
But you still get so much emotion from that character, and both Eunice and Peter Mayhew did, just with body language and everything, did so much. I mean, look at 3PO. Look at how much emotion that Anthony Daniels brings to that character in so many scenes. After Ben Kenobi dies and R2-3PO are sitting there, like, they are so sad looking.
Yeah.
3PO looks so sad. He's not frowning. He's not crying. He's got the same expression that he has in all 12 other movies, but he looks sad. And Anthony Daniels does that, and it's amazing.
Yeah. So it'll be, it's more and more possible. And the masks now are so much more emotive. Like you're saying, there's so much more you can do with, animatronics in the faces, but also CGI enhancements after the fact that you could really make Akbar into.
You look at what they did with Radis recently. I think they said that they completely rebuilt Radis for Andor season 2, and you can tell that Radis's lip movements look to be CGI in that. So like, could you add a bit, create a mask, and then obviously they're rebuilding Akbar from scratch, do that, and with some CGI enhancements, maybe it's a trap will just hit harder than normal. Maybe we'll have even more emotion. It'll be overflowing.
Yeah. Well, and like, think about like Akbar, like, he's a guy, he fought the war, he survived this battle against the Empire, and he did all this. Like, do you think he's really excited about doing another one? It might be like a kind of an exhausting thing, and you could do a real like compelling story about a guy who thought he had, vanquished evil, and the old general being pulled back into the battle and having to fight again, and the reluctance that there might be to do that. There's a lot there. There's a lot of potential there. I think you could do some really, really interesting things. The chat is reminding me that I forgot Neil in my list of alien characters who are, main characters now. So there's another one, and there's a not a humanoid.
So
face.
much emotion.
Yeah, so much.
Arguably the most emotional character of all of them.
Yeah. Matthew Hardy in the chat's also raising the question of who would voice Akbar, since Eric Bowersfield passed away a few years ago. I think Tom Kane did him for Last Jedi, which also seems unlikely these days given Tom's health conditions. I think he had a pretty nasty stroke. But there's lots of people that can do it. I know James Arnold Taylor has a Akbar impression that he likes to bust out from time to time. There's the dude that did it on the Clone Wars. His name was like Art something, I think. I can't remember what his name was.
Art Butler, I believe, did in Clone Wars.
So I just because of that connection, maybe that would be where I would start, like the assumption.
Or I mean, I don't know. Maybe this is the opportunity. Like, no disrespect to anybody else, but like you could maybe cast someone really high caliber, to put the voice in and bring a dimension. I don't know. You know, maybe Dwayne the Rock Johnson as Lockhart. You know, it could happen.
It's a trap. Yeah. The other. So here's the other thing I think that Filoni really, really needs to get right in season 2. The Mortis gods, or Mortis itself.
That's true.
Because I think a valid criticism of Ahsoka season 1 is that it relied too heavily on the audience's knowledge of other things, be it the Clone Wars, be it the prequels, be it the expanded universe, and of course Star Wars Rebels, because it is basically a sequel to Star Wars Rebels. And so I think it relied a little too heavily on that. And Mortis is such a weird concept. It's an awesome concept, but it's weird.
Yeah. It's something that I have seen those episodes of Clone Wars multiple times, many times. I've had many years to think about them. I'm still not sure I fully understand the Mortis gods and everything they did. I still don't think I understand it.
Yeah. So if you're going to do that, if you're going to do Mortis, it has to be perfect, and it has to be in a way that anybody watching it, if it's their first time watching it, if all they've seen is the movies and season 1, they will understand what's going on. The answer cannot be, when someone says, what's going on with that Mortis thing? The answer cannot be, go watch the Clone Wars. That's not good enough. That's not a good enough answer for this show. It has to be entirely there. And yeah, it's kind of, the Mortis is 3 episodes out of 100 and something on the Clone Wars. That's pretty niche. They reappear in like one Rebels episode to open the door to get into the World Between Worlds. So you gotta get that right. You can't rely on the past. So it's pretty niche. And again, Andor did this too with the Gorman massacre. Like that's a very niche reference. If you rewind 12 months ago, not many people knew about that. That's not a thing, but now everybody knows about it. Tony Gilroy made it into a thing that, people understand what that is. And Mortis has to be Ahsoka's version of the Gorman massacre. Not literally. Like, I'm not saying go in and kill a bunch of people. It's not going to be a protest that turns into a massacre.
That too.
But it has to be this like weird niche thing that only the crazy nerds know about, that gets turned into like a mainstream thing that anybody can understand. And so I think if Filoni can accomplish those two things, Akbar becomes a real character and Mortis blows our minds in a similar way to Gorman. Again, not the same emotions. I think Mortis likely will be sort of awe-inspiring and triumphant, probably, as opposed to Gorman, which was awe-inspiring and horrific. I think if it gets those two things right, along with just having a good central story for Ahsoka and Sabine and those characters, then all of a sudden that the criticism of Filoni being the Ahsoka guy, not the Andor guy, I think that goes away.
Yeah, I also think how he handled the World Between Worlds in season 1, I think was admirable, because I mean, maybe it's not an apt comparison, but like it kind of boiled down to kind of like a kind of a glorified Easter egg in a sense. Like it was treated like this dream world that Ahsoka was experiencing, that things, and I think a lot of people going in as Ahsoka and seeing that and being like, oh, like a lot of people do not like the World Between Worlds, like that concept. They're like, this is introducing like time travel and stuff that I don't think should be in Star Wars, and this is counterproductive. And I get those opinions, but Filoni was just like, okay, this thing exists, it's there, but we're not really going to talk about it. We're not really doing that. And it was just like treated as this thing of Ahsoka's there. It's not explained. It doesn't need to be explained because anyone that is watching that for the first time, has no experience with that, is not going to think twice about it. But those of us who have seen Rebels and Clone Wars, like, we know that. I think with Mortis is way deeper, and it'd be curious to see like how farther they get to it. Because like you watch season 1, you see Balin on the cliffs, and you're like, oh, big statues. What are these about? Like, what is this? Like, and then we're all screaming, oh my god, it's the fun. We're all freaking out because we understand that. Striking that balance, which is something that Star Wars often struggles with, of fan service, putting in stuff that people recognize, and also making it so that people that are just watching this for the first time can go, oh, that's cool. Oh, Mythosaur. Oh, whatever. Like, this random thing that's happening. Like, it's just there. It's not something that I have to understand. It's not that deep. Yeah, a lot of hefty lifting in season 2.
Yeah, it's gonna be a challenge. Like it's regardless, like we're gonna have fun, I think, because it's gonna get into that stuff that we love and we've wanted to see for a long time. But in terms of like cementing Filoni as the guy and convincing the general audience that Ahsoka and this story is worth telling and worth getting invested in, I think season 2. It's got a fair bit of ground to cover. I think season 1 was good, but not great. And I really, really want season 2 to be great because Andor was great. And I think Ahsoka should be and could be great with the level of talent that's involved. Have I ever told you my how I think my like tiny little fix for how I think they could have made the Anakin stuff more punchy in season 1?
I'm sure I've heard it, but I have no memory of it. So by all means.
So the Anakin hologram where he's teaching Ahsoka that you see in like episode 6 or 7 of the show? That should have been in episode 2. It should have been way, way, way earlier in the show. And I know why it wasn't. They wanted to have Anakin's first appearance on the show be a cliffhanger to the next episode. I get it. I understand it. But again, I don't think that show did enough to establish who everybody's relationships was with each other, including Ahsoka and Anakin. And I think you put that scene earlier. You see the love between the two of them. You see how much he cares about her. Hayden's performance is fantastic. You see how she really appreciates him and what he brings. But you can also sort of but it also has a little bit of the undercurrent of this guy went evil. So maybe not everything he said was awesome. And that, I think, sets up their relationship better so that when he does appear at the end of episode 4 and then through episode 5, you get, again, we don't need it. You and I don't need it. Most people listening to the show don't need it. For the folks that are less familiar with this world and the history of Anakin and Ahsoka, I think that gives you a clear sense of who they are to each other instead of it being a little out of nowhere. Yes, Balin references it during his duel with Ahsoka, that like they have this history together, Anakin and her, but I think it's more impactful to see it. And that scene is really, really good. The like training hologram scene, really, really good.
I like that scene. I love that scene.
Put that in episode 2, and I think that just tightens everything up in terms of understanding their relationship and also reminding the people who already know, so that when you see them in episode 4 and 5, it's more impactful. I think it would have hit harder.
I definitely could see that. I think it's easy for us, and maybe even easy for Dave Filoni, to forget that like the concept, we have to go back to our 2008 opinions of Anakin Skywalker has a Padawan. What is this nonsense? Like that whole thing. Still, like, my parents don't really know who Ahsoka is. Really,
Yeah.
truly. They're Star Wars fans. They've seen all the movies. They've seen a lot of the shows. But they're still like, who's this Ahsoka character? They're not really up on that. I think a lot of the audience is still. I think that's one handicap maybe of the Ahsoka series is just like, okay, who is Ahsoka? What was her relationship? You know, what was all this? You know, I never saw her in the movies. What's this deal? And I think setting that up a bit more instead of like having this understood thing, because I think Ahsoka is kind of hard. I think it really is it's really Rebels season 5 to me. That's how I see it. I feel like you're not going to get as much out of it if you haven't seen Clone Wars. You're especially not going to get a lot out of it if you haven't seen Rebels, which I'm okay with. I'm okay with them doing that, but that automatically makes it not as approachable to the average Joe who is just, new live action Star Wars show. No, you need some backstory things. You need something there. And I think, there is this whole back and forth that you constantly have of what is understood, what is not understood. Star Wars being this massive cultural touchstone that everyone just understands it. Even if they haven't seen the movies, they know Star Wars. And how much of that do you assume that they know? You assume that everyone's seen A New Hope. Well, you assume everyone's seen the original 6. You assume everyone's seen the original 9. This keeps going further and further. How many of the movies? How many of the shows? How much does the popular consciousness? Obviously, Ahsoka is a massive character that I will love, but how much of an impact has she had so far? I would say after having season 1, a lot more people know her now because of the live action show. But there's still that undercurrent of just like,
Ahsoka has like, and since 2008, this is a character that has grown in awareness and popularity and all that stuff, where there is a lot of people do know about her. Very, very, very popular character. They wouldn't have done the show if they weren't confident that they could get people to tune in and be interested in this character. But yeah, like I said, I think I want to do an Ahsoka rewatch. I need to do an Ahsoka rewatch because there's a lot of things I like in that show, and but there's also a bunch of things that sort of bug me in it, and I feel like over time in your mind, like I sometimes catch myself putting too much weight on the things that bug me, and then I almost convince myself that I don't like something, and then I rewatch it and I go, oh no, actually that was good. What was I talking about? Like the problems still exist, but they're not as big as I made them in my mind. And I think that's what I've been doing with Ahsoka because, because like I said, I thought it was really, really good, but not great. It wasn't as great as I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be the best thing, but I would rank it behind Andor certainly, and also Obi-Wan Kenobi and certain seasons of Mandalorian, all that stuff. So.
Oh, I definitely feel that, that whole thing with, your perception of something and how far away from it you get. And, you haven't seen it in a while and how you feel about it. And, I tend to hold on to the things that I like versus what I didn't like, or,
Same.
and but then then there's The Rise of Skywalker, which is a movie that continues to challenge me, and I remember the things that piss me off, and I have to force myself to go, there's a lot of things I really do like in that movie. There's a lot of things that really do work that I have to remember that I can't, things, and and it also helps to hear different perspectives and, listen to people that really do like these things and being like, this thing really worked for me, and how is this? And I'm challenged by other people, and then you really like something, and you hear from somebody that really doesn't like that thing, and that's painful to hear sometimes too. And it can be opposite, but then it's like, what the most painful part of that fact is, they're making some good points. These criticisms they have, the thing that I love, they're actually making some points here, and I don't know how to deal with that. So
it's like, I like Last Jedi, but the slow speed chase isn't really a great engine for momentum. It doesn't really build up things. The fact that the whole plot is based around space gas. That's maybe not quite as exciting as it should have been. You know,
and like, look,
but then
Ahsoka,
the Rey and Luke stuff is so good, and it makes me forget.
Yeah, exactly. In Last Jedi is a yo-yo experience. It was just like, this works really well. Oh, okay, I'm not sure about this. Like, it's a yo-yo thing. But like with Ahsoka, like, you know, I really love Ahsoka, still do. I need to do a rewatch, but you know, you get to that last episode, and I'm like, man, this choreography is not good. this is not working.
Yeah, it's true. All right, let's we'll move on from that. I know Joel has submitted another super chat.
What question will we answer? I don't remember.
Hell if I know. Joel has another super chat. We'll get to that in a little bit. Let's get to some other Discord questions first, before we return to the questions and commentary of Joel Davis. Darth Robin on Discord says, Dave Filoni is already chief creative officer. Would it not be preferable that he remain in that position rather than become Lucasfilm president and get more administrative responsibilities and presumably become less involved in the nitty-gritty creative side of things? What do you think?
That was when I first heard, and when people kept saying, oh, you know, he's going to be the next Lucasfilm president. I was like, didn't he just get this position? Didn't he just get promoted to this position? You know, and obviously things change and obviously things evolve. That doesn't really mean anything, but you know, it felt like a good place for him, and it felt like, you know, okay, this is a place where he can really thrive, and have a lot of responsibility. Something that I think he deserves, being someone that's been at Lucasfilm for 20, you know, plus years now. You know, he deserves to have a senior position. He deserves to be able to do that. But is he having it? It is, you know, giving him the president routine. Is that too much responsibility? Does he even want that? You know, I don't know. Again, I'll say it again. I'm tired of talking about this. I'm tired of speculating about this because I don't know. Just pick somebody. I think it's going to be somebody that we don't even know.
Yeah. Well, the key thing to remember. So here's the thing about any sort of, you know, making Dave Filoni president or co-president is it's important to keep Carrie Beck in mind, because that was the report that it would be the two of them together running it. And so I think for Filoni, it would probably just be a change in title rather than any sort of significant change in responsibility. I think it'd be a change in title, probably a change in pay. You know, he probably gets a sweet bonus and a sweet sweet raise. And so there's that. But I think he probably continues mostly doing what he is currently doing now. And Carrie Beck handles that nitty-gritty administrative stuff, which she already does for a bunch of the shows. So I think that's where you wind up.
What do you think Chief Creative Officer does? Like, what do you think that job is? In control of the story, like overseeing the storytelling and being in close contact with all these storytellers in the story group and guiding all of that, like, and then also, you know, a president who has that things, it would be similar. So, you know, he might already kind of have that job already. Because I don't, like, as much as I respect Kathleen Kennedy, I don't see her in that thing. I think that's not her strong suit. That's Filoni knowing all the canon and stuff like that, being such a close compatriot to George Lucas for all those years. That makes him supremely qualified to that. Kathleen Kennedy is business-minded. She's the producer. She's the person who can let people like Filoni do their jobs easier. But could Carrie Beck come in or someone else do that same thing, but just in a different kind of setup? I think this has weight. Obviously, we won't know anything for a while. We you know, and even then. So, but you know, we'll see.
Yeah. Excuse me. The next question. We'll go on to our next question here. This one from Gilster10. Gilster10's got kind of a fun what if question. He says, here's a fun what if. What if the Separatists won the Battle of Coruscant and Anakin and Obi-Wan's rescue failed? I know Palps controls both sides, but maybe he ruled by the side while the Separatists hold all the Jedi. hold all the Jedi and senators hostage.
Oh,
interesting.
I always liked. I don't know. I think this maybe came from the novelization, or maybe some kind of EU thing. But the whole idea that Dooku's the thing that he thought was going to happen, leading up to his untimely demise, is the idea of that they were going to do basically the whole shebang right there on the invisible hand, that Palpatine was going to reveal himself, that him, Anakin, and Dooku and Palpatine were basically going to team up and do the whole thing there. And then Palpatine's like, psych, I'm going to let him cut your head off. And then that happens. So like, that whole thing, obviously it doesn't necessarily have to come to pass that way, but like the whole idea that the separatists could thing, how much does Palpatine have control over that? How does that different from that? It still could be, oh, well, the separatists won and they get to decide whose things, but ultimately it's still Palpatine. It really doesn't matter, because ultimately Palpatine is in control of things. It's just the optics of, at the end of the day, the droids get shut down, the Republic wins, and they get turned into the Empire. That's what Palpatine wants.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, but the thing about Palpatine is, for as much as he has a plan, I think he's very adaptable. Like things happen and he changes the plan. And I think something like the Battle of Coruscant, it's a big gamble for him. But let's not pretend he hasn't thought out three different, 3 to 10 different like potential situations for how things might go. He has the way he wants them to go, which is probably what we see in Revenge of the Sith. But yeah, he might have pondered other ways to, get what he wants. And, he could, if he gets kidnapped by the separatists, they take Coruscant, then maybe he becomes, chancellor in exile, and he builds up more, power and clout with the people that way. And then all of a sudden he's really beloved. So when the Jedi retake Coruscant, all of a sudden he can make himself emperor and things like that. Like there's all sorts of ways it could have gone, but he's very adaptable. He takes every situation in stride. So if things go well, he's great, wonderful, best day ever. If they don't go well, he adapts and he figures out ways to make everything to his benefit. He didn't want Padme to go back to Naboo in Phantom Menace. He wanted her to stay. Like that, she might have messed up his plans by liberating the planet too early and things like that. But he adapts. He just sort of he makes every situation work to his advantage. And so if he loses, he'll find a way to win eventually. It might take a couple of steps back, but he'll find a way to win.
And I think we, or maybe this is just in my head, but I feel like I project and I think of these things and I have to rework them in my head. But I think the general idea in fandom is just like, oh, Sidious is a god. He's this god-like being that can just manipulate everyone into doing everything that he wants and whatever else. And I think, yes, strong in the dark side, he is, but I don't think he's that strong. I think he is a guy who is incredibly intelligent and, yes, very strong on the Force and can do a lot. He can influence people, but there's only so much he can do. And I think at the end of the day, he just has a plan. And he just pivots. He just goes this way and that way. And I think, honestly, a best example of that is Rise of Skywalker. Like, you get to the end, and his whole plan is, okay, let's get my granddaughter. Let's get her to come here, and then I will pass my essence into her body, and I will live on forever. And then Ben and Rey show up, and he's like, oh, okay, you're a dyad. Oh, I see how this is going. He's like, I'm just going to take your Force essence, and I'm going to be the body. Like, this is going to be my power now. Like, that's just him going like, oh, okay, change of plans now. This is what we're doing now because I found something better. That's kind of what Sheev does. It's just like, he does the thing until he can pivot, and you see a lot of Clone Wars because obviously the good guys have to win a lot in Clone Wars, and then it usually ends with, well, they won this time, but it's all part of my plan. It will actually work out in my favor eventually. That kind of thing. And obviously it's a hand wavy storytelling kind of way, but it is also like everything can't go his way all the time. She just manages to pull everything out in the end.
Yeah. Even in even in the Rise of Skywalker, which is the most making shit up as you go story of all time. He's adapting. All right. Good question. Gilster. All right, let's do another one from Joel, because Joel did drop a super chat saying, adding to this, thoughts on Ahsoka filming in the UK. He also had a longer version in the Discord that I'll give a quick read to, saying, hello, Underworld. For this question, I'm specifically looking to the future, specifically Ahsoka Season 2. Something I find interesting, if a bit odd, about Ahsoka Season 2 is that despite being in an era where Disney is slowing down its streaming output and maybe even considering stopping original streaming altogether, who knows, Ahsoka is not only moving forward, but according to Dave Filoni, it might actually be getting a boost in its budget. For one thing, it's filming in the UK and not Los Angeles, and according to Dave himself, it will be less reliant on the volume. They will use more real sets and practical effects. They apparently built a Home 1 hangar set. So my question is, why? Why, despite Disney cutting back on streaming, does Ahsoka Season 2 seem to be getting more production resources? Is it because Dave's growing influence at Lucasfilm, or is it because the show is leading directly into a future film, or is it a third reason? I just find this business decision fascinating. That said, still hyped for Ahsoka Season 2. All the same. Thrawn versus Akbar. Let's go. Here's the thing. I think it's kind of all of the above there. Dave's growing influence at Lucasfilm, probably. Chief Creative Officer probably gets a little bit more leeway. Maybe not as much as we might think, but a little bit more leeway from Disney when it comes to getting more money. Cutting back on streaming doesn't necessarily mean that the budget of the shows are going down, just that there's going to be less shows. Yeah. So instead of there being 3 shows a year that cost $300 million each to make, you might have one show that costs $350 million to make. So yes, that one show is a little bit more expensive than it might have been under the previous thing, but you're still saving, $550 million on that show, right? It's still a huge saving. So okay, yeah, we'll pump a little bit more into Ahsoka. It's leading into a feature film. Yes, it also will be probably the only Star Wars live action original output on Disney Plus within its calendar year. It might be more than 12 months between the last episode of Andor and the first episode of Ahsoka. Wow. For us, where we're going to watch Tales of the Underworld and Lego Star Wars and Maul Shadow Lord and the Ninth Jedi and Visions and all that stuff, that may not feel like a big deal. But again, if we put ourselves in the shoes of the general audience, it may not be that big. May not be that big a deal, it may be a much bigger deal for them because there won't have been a new Star Wars show in quite some time, as far as they're concerned. Filming in the UK, moving away from the volume. Yeah, I mean, that might be looking at the success of Andor and going, there is something nice about having something really tactile and real. And yes, you utilize the volume, utilize green screen, utilize all these things to make things more expansive, but also, having real sets does do something. It does do something for the actors, and it does look a little bit better on screen. And my theory again is that they want these shows to be events when they're on, and to make them feel like events, you have to treat them like events. And so you have to kind of treat them more like they're movies than like they're shows. And so that means going to where the best crew for making Star Wars is. And no disrespect to the folks that have made Star Wars in Los Angeles for the last few years, but clearly, the people they are most comfortable with making Star Wars shows are the people in the UK. It's the folks at Pinewood Studios. It's guys like Michael Wilkinson, as the costume designer on all of the films, and then on Andor. You know, getting those sorts of creatives involved in Ahsoka might help elevate it. You know, maybe not. You know, if the story is crap, then, you know, having good costumes and good sets doesn't really do much for you. But it, you know, a good story can be elevated or will be elevated by good sets, but good costumes, better effects, all of those things. So I think the hope is that the shows will be events when they're on, because it won't just be, hey, there's another Star Wars this week. It's different than last week's, but it's, you know, it's just more. It'll be like, oh, wow, there hasn't been a Star Wars show on in a year. Better check this out because it's going to be huge. It's going to be a war between Admiral Akbar and Thrawn. Ahsoka's going to go to Mortis, and Anakin's Force Ghost is going to be there. And like all of these things that will make everybody, from us, the hardcores, to the casuals, want to tune in. You know, you do everything as big as possible because you're not doing very many shows anymore. So you make the ones that you do make, you make them count.
And I think I also can't imagine that they wouldn't be like high on this Andor thing of like everyone loves this, including the critics, which Star Wars has a complicated relationship with critics. Even when the fans are on board, the critics sometimes aren't. Have a project that's like, okay, everyone loves this, everyone's things. And I'm not saying that they can capture lightning in a bottle. I think Andor is a lot lightning in the bottle in a sense. But, you know, they can't help but feeling like, okay, the general consensus among kind of everyone is that Star Wars shows and Disney Plus have been a mixed bag. There's been some good, there's been some not so great stuff. And I think pulling back on that, and especially in this time, I'm just like, we can't afford to waste money on a show and it just be throwaway. And I think just in general, I think it's gotten bad. I think there's so much going on streaming. There's so many shows that I'm like, oh, I'd like to watch that. Oh, it's gone. Oh, okay. It's on a streaming service. Like, I don't have time to think about it. It's gone. And you really have to pay attention and be things like, okay, I want to watch that. I'm going to make time for that. And it's one of 8 other shows that are premiering this week. And I can't like possibly give things. And I think, again, making Star Wars that event. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of these companies, this doesn't just go with Star Wars, it goes with everything. Like, you know, I think these companies are learning the hard way of, you can't just pump it out. You can't just create an assembly line.
Yeah.
I think that was maybe the fatal flaw in the whole idea that we were originally pitched back in 2012 of, well, we're going to have a Star Wars movie every single year until we're all dead. Like, you know, that's the thing. And it sounded great on paper. What I don't think any of us really thought about, at least I definitely didn't, was just like, you're basically setting up an assembly line. You're setting up of deadline of, we have to keep doing this. And then the streaming services come along like, oh, we can be releasing stuff all the time. We can have, you know, every week can we have something else coming out every month. I think the streaming bubble has burst. This whole content bubble has burst. And I think, you know, it becomes less special, and you know, you need to have time for things to just go away. I know this sounds weird. I'm loving the fact that there's nothing going on this week. I'm loving the fact that the biggest news we got was Spaceballs 2. I'm loving the fact that for the next 6 months, really nothing's much going to be going on. For the next 12 months, there's probably not going to be a whole lot going on. The next big thing we have to look forward to is, you know, Mandalorian and Grogu. And we just get to sit in that and look forward to that and just not have a whole lot going on. And I love that. I love that for the general audience, Star Wars is kind of going to disappear. And it's not going to be a thing around. And Andor's big now, and it's just going to fade off in the background. And that's good because people won't get tired of it. And I think in general, I think the if you talk to a lot of people, I think the general consensus is, you know, there's just too much of it. And I think, you know, it's hard to keep up with. And I don't want that. I like the idea of like, there's one big Star Wars show this year. Ahsoka. Have you seen Ahsoka? Have you not?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I haven't been able to get to it. Well, it was only one show that came out this year. What are you doing with your life?
What are you doing with your life? Yeah. And it wouldn't shock me if Ahsoka winds up having some sort of like Andor style release where maybe it's not 3 episodes a week, but maybe instead of 8 weeks, it's 4 weeks of 2 episodes.
And also, and what I was leading up to earlier was Andor style quality. Can we get that?
Across the board.
I am not going to be one of these people that's like everything needs to be like Andor, and now everything that I watch sucks because I watched Andor. I'm not doing that. But in like there, it's just a fact. The writing could be tightened up. The production quality could be tightened up. There's things that bug me about these shows. I love Ahsoka, but it's not the tightest show. And I think taking a step back and going, okay, we're just going to do this right now. We're not doing a bunch of different shows. We're going to do this, and we're going to get Ahsoka perfect, or as close to perfect it could possibly be. And then we're going to do it, as opposed to trying to do all these different things.
Yeah, the idea that not everything should be Andor is in terms of genre and in terms of tone.
Right.
Like not everything needs to be this gritty, bleak political drama. That isn't necessary. That Star Wars isn't just that. Star Wars can be a lot of things. Star Wars can be a funny, lighthearted adventure. It can be a little goofy. It can be over the top. What we're saying when I say everything, I want things to be more like Andor, is I want the quality of writing, the quality of filmmaking, and the quality of like filmmaking just sort of encompasses everything. Like that's what you're looking for. Like you're looking for great. You want it to look great. You want it to be great performances. You want the dialogue to be great. You want all of that stuff to be great in whatever genre you choose to do. Even if you're doing something really pulpy like The Mandalorian, and like seasons 1 and 2 of Mandalorian kind of did that. Season 3 gets a little off track, but season 1 and 2 are they are at that level of quality. They're a different show. They're tonally different. I don't think anybody would confuse the two, but they kind of get there. But with Book of Boba and season 3 of Mando, it kind of loses it a little bit and it gets a little off track. But then you'll see flashes of it, like the episode 2 of Book of Boba, I think is of that quality.
Yeah.
So I think that's where you're. I think that's the thing about trying to make things more like Andor. It's not a feeling of just making every show Andor, making every show adult like Andor. It's just making sure that the same level of craftsmanship, that's the word I think we're looking for. It's craftsmanship goes into making it.
I'm not even saying, because Andor is maybe not perfect, but it's darn close as you can get.
The closest they've got.
And I almost, it feels almost unfair to say like be more like Andor when that type of production quality and obviously the money that went into that show and the detail, like it's hard to say like be more like that when that almost feels unachievable. But there's been some Star Wars shows where it feels like this nowhere in the ballpark. I'm not gonna call any names. I love all of you Star Wars shows. Some of
I love all of you equally.
Not equally, but I love all of you. And some of you just didn't cut the mustard. You could have done better. And I don't want that again. I want Ahsoka was, in my opinion, a show that was heading that direction, was pushing to could really do that. So
yeah. Ben, I just want to know, because from something you just said there, how do you cut mustard? I always thought it was something you squeezed or spread. I didn't think it was something you cut.
That's a very good question. Okay, it's an expression that I don't use often. It's been around a lot longer than either of us. As with a lot of things, it probably has some hidden meaning that we don't know. Maybe mustard was a harder substance 100 years ago. I don't know.
Slice it onto your sandwich. All right, that's it. That's enough. Once we start discussing the history of mustard, that's when you know it's time to wrap up the show. So we will leave things there and begin to wrap things up for this week. Thank you everybody for tuning in. We will be back. Some combination of us will be back next Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern, live on the Star Wars Underworld YouTube channel and Facebook page and Twitch channel. I guess that exists too. So tune in then, and of course we'll be in your podcast feeds for Friday morning. Who knows what will happen in the next 7 days? Could be a lot, could be nothing. Could do more celebration stories, could do more Q&A. Maybe we'll have a big news story. Maybe we'll completely break the format of this show and say, hey, let's do an in-depth discussion of Splinter of the Mind's Eye. Who knows? Who knows what we'll do in the next 7 days? I
say we just change the name to the Spaceballs Underworld and we just go full force because that's coming out, and we'll just embrace it.
All right. I think that's what we should do. Maybe we should do like a breakdown of Spaceballs. But do it with the same level of seriousness that we would do like an Andor discussion. We should do that.
I don't know about that. It's been a hot minute since I've seen that movie. We might need to do a Discord watch through on that.
I'll show up for that one.
Okay, deal. You heard that, Joel, right?
Yeah. I think that'd be really fun. So tune in next week. Ben, do you want to plug anything as we wind down the show here?
I don't really. Nothing.
Cool.
Fingers crossed we do an IPC at some point in the near future. We have some stuff to talk about. The Jurassic Boys are getting back together. Okay, it's heating up. That universe is really heating up.
That should be your band name, the Jurassic Boys.
If I was musically inclined, maybe. I will promote another thing. I will promote because I think Joel was yelling at me in the chat about this. We are watching, I believe, Star Wars Visions tomorrow night, Friday, on the Discord.
Nice.
The Star Wars Fortnite has played itself out. We're kind of tired of Fortnite, so we're switching to something else.
All right. We'll check out Visions. I'm excited to dive back into Visions. I think with Volume 3 coming up relatively soon, and a couple of those episodes being sequels to ones from season 1, I'm jonesing for a Visions rewatch, and this Friday might be the time.
Season 1 is low key my favorite. I think I really like a lot of those episodes.
Don't sleep on season 2 either, though. Like Volume 2's got some
again. I watched it once or twice back in the day. I've just been like, oh, that's in the background. I kind of I need to rewatch it again and actually get a feeling for what I actually feel about it.
Screecher's Reach, the Irish one, is genuinely one of my favorite Star Wars short stories. It's so weird and creepy. I know we were talking earlier, we don't really like horror. That's the extent to which I can do horror, is Screecher's Reach.
I don't like horror, but I do Brain Invaders. Okay, there's episodes of Clone Wars that I'm like, okay, I could do with this.
But it's Screecher's Reach. It's like it's like the hero's journey, but it's becoming a Sith instead of becoming a Jedi. It's really good, really good. So excited for more Visions when that comes around. Ben, thank you for being on. It was a pleasure. It's great fun chatting with you. And hopefully we get that IPC new episode very, very soon. I will plug my Substack, DominicGJones.substack.com, aka Hoth Off the Press. You get usually 2 posts weekly. One that is always free, and one that is usually requires you to subscribe and pay for. But they're both really good. This week there's 3 posts because last week there was only 1 post, and so we're balancing things out. But I just finally posted my Tales of the Underworld review just over a month later because, as we talked about on this show, there's been a lot of things since we've been back from Celebration Japan, including Tales of the Underworld. And I've got a new post going up tomorrow, which is Friday. So today, as most of you are listening to this, that is an in-depth look at the Clone Wars episode Shadow of Malevolence. because that's what everybody is asking for these days. An in-depth look at Shadow of Malevolence. I'm very happy with it. I hope everybody enjoys it. So DominicGJones.substack.com. Subscribe there. Subscribe for free, or if you really like it, pay. That would be fun too. As we said off the top, make sure you subscribe to the Star Wars Underworld on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you like to get your shows. You can become a channel member on YouTube to support us financially, and you can leave a review on Apple Podcasts and any other platform that lets you leave a review. Join the Discord. They're watching Visions on Friday. Should be fun. Do Spaceballs sometime after that. And follow us on social media at the SWU pretty much everywhere to keep up with all the latest breaking Star Wars news as it breaks between shows, and check out the other shows on the Star Wars Underworld Network. I'm going to be guest hosting Ion Canon this week. Me and Joel are going to talk about the original Thrawn trilogy. We're talking Heir to the Empire. We're talking Dark Force Rising, and we're talking The Last Command. So tune into that. It will be lots of fun. Also, check out the Raeside, Tales from Beyond the Galaxy. They're back. They're posting new episodes. I saw they post new episodes. I'm very excited about that. And of course, the Tractor Beam, which is heating up as the High Republic winds down as well. So do check out all of those shows. But that is it. That is it for this week. For all of us at the Star Wars Underworld, for Ben, for Chris, for Hannah, both of those two who weren't here. My name is Dominic. And may the Force be with you. It's a wrap.
May the Schwartz be with you.